Have you ever had a moment when you walk into a room or you are dealing with a person and your body just starts to feel a little off? Something isn't right and you're uncomfortable. Maybe you're having elevated heart rate. Maybe your skin is prickly. You just know something is wrong. Your chest is tightening. Maybe your stomach is dipping. You're getting the butterflies. I mean, everybody feels things differently. But have you ever had that moment when you just weren't sure what was going on and you felt this before you could even figure out why? Most people would kind of brush past it, but you notice. And here's the part you may not realize yet. That flicker, it's not proof that something's the matter necessarily with you, even though you might feel off. It's the very first clue that your survival instinct just opened up its gigantic tome that it has been taking notes in your whole life and running your life. It has opened it up again and it has started writing one more page of how you should behave, how other people should behave. And, this isn't about fixing you. This is about you realizing this is not you, because our survival instincts are not our personality. They're not who we are. They're not things that we just have to, suck up and live with. Other people can do these things and we can't. That's not true. That's not true at all. I'm Dr. Charlie Hornes. I'm a doctorate level, clinically trained and certified spiritual counselor and a master certified thoughtwork strategist. I work with high functioning women who are tired of saying, I'm fine, when they know they're not. If you're exhausted from being the one who's holding it all together while quietly falling apart, this show is for you. Welcome to the Art of Managing Your Brain. Let's go. Everybody categorizes into one dominant instinct. There's 5 of them. I have my signature 5th one: fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and seek. We all have one of these as our dominant, and everybody reacts differently based on their archetype, based on the survival instinct that they default to. And everybody that's in your animal group, all the lions, all the owls, all the deer, all of you, most of you react in exactly the same way, depending on your story and your experience. But regardless of how high or low on that scale of reaction you are, you all have these things in common. Hey friend, welcome to the Art of Managing Your Brain. I'm Dr. Charlie Hornes, and I'm so glad to have you with me today. We are doing things a little differently for a while. I am moving just to some audio weekly instead of video. You'll still find me on the ever popular YouTube channel. And thank you to, we're creeping up to like almost 500,000 subscribers. And that's really pretty amazing. I'm just grateful for all of the support, and I'm hoping that, what we share here on this show is helpful and beneficial to you. But, I don't really see the point at this point in video because it takes so much of my day just to blow my hair out, put makeup on, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I guess I wouldn't have to do any of that, but I will say that my first career was acting, and I definitely have a narcissistic streak in me. And I'm not really sure I'm ready yet to just, go on camera and not be camera ready. It's just a thing because that was my job, and it's super dumb. And I get that. But I also don't have a lot of time. And, I also don't care what people think about me, but I don't feel like going through comments of, not wearing makeup and being told to smile more and I need to wear lipstick and bullshit. I just need, I think that audio is better for me anyway, because, my show's serious and people that listen to podcasts are pretty serious. I know I am, and I'm not watching videos. I'm listening to the audio. If I'm on YouTube, I'm listening to the audio while I'm in the car or I'm on Apple or whatever. So whatever platform. But it's the content, not whatever it looks like. I'm not even watching anyway because I listen in the car to all my favorite podcasts. So anyway, so that's one change. And I did just take a fall break. I just needed to, we've had so much going on, some negative and some positive. Obviously, Kerrville here is still recovering from the floods. And, my husband is pretty involved in that rebuild and recovery process. So, he needs a lot of support and just the community. My backyard has kind of turned into a pro bono coaching and spiritual care therapy sessions that, I have a lot of people just coming over and sitting by the pool in the backyard. And we are unpacking these big questions. And that's my favorite topic. I'm not very good with small talk, never have been, never gonna be. But if you want to get into it, if you want to get into metaphysics and philosophy, ontological questions about why this and who is the being of God, blah, 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 like I'm all over that. You want to argue about Aristotle and his sexism? Let's go. But the how's the weather is not my jam. So I've opened my backyard to all kinds of people that I know are being referred to me that just need to like unpack this entire summer situation with the flood. So there's that. Oh, and this is fun. We got skunked. Yes, we got skunked. My beautiful dog, lovely Rocky, who I'm sure you've seen on a few episodes wandering through when I was doing video, apparently took down a skunk in our backyard. And so the entire house, the dog, the yard, the garage, everything smelled like a skunk. And it was awful, awful. We're still washing stuff. So that's good. And then some positive stuff. My son and I, my oldest, my 13-year-old, who is just becoming the coolest human alive, the coolest human I've ever experienced. And watching a child grow into their like adult self, right? This intermediate place where he's going from like boy to man that I'm sure is extremely awkward for him, but he's doing so good. We went on a day trip and went and saw Modest Mouse in San Antonio at the Aztec, which is such a cool theater. I love that theater. We saw Dave Chappelle there once, and that was amazing. And we had such a blast. Now, if anybody knows them, by the way, they did not play Ocean Breathe Salty. They did not play Night on the Sun. They did not play Trailer Trash. They did not play Dramamine. They did not play Interstate. Like, they didn't play so many good songs. It was so hard to wrap my head around that. So anyway, if you know them, tell them that they need to like get their repertoire straight because of course, I saw them 20 years ago at Irving Plaza in Union Square, New York City. So I'm just a spoiled brat when it comes to like music. I'm a big music fan. So anyway, so that's what's been going on. I'm watching a 13-year-old blossom. I had to de-skunk my house and my backyard has turned into basically a pro bono therapy session office. And it's awesome. I love it. Okay, so before we get started, have you taken my quiz? Go to charliehornetscoaching.com/quiz. This quiz is blowing up, you guys. People really want to know what their survival instinct archetype is. Are you the lion, the deer, the fox, the owl, or the panther? And when you take the quiz, you'll get your result, and then you're going to get a free cinematic. I'm doing all this really cool art, and I'm starting to put that on Etsy, by the way. My store is Reflex and Relic. And it's about the archetype instinct animals that what I imagine them to look like. And obviously I'm using digital tools like, some AI stuff, but the images are my creations and they use the sort of storm aesthetic. And I have this kind of dream of visual art that is cinematic realism married to hyperbole. So I'm not like trying to make photographs that you're going to believe. Like you totally know this is absolutely over the top. But that's the point is I'm creating these like visuals of what I imagine that we feel when we are dealing with these instincts, what we would imagine our animals to look like. So anyway, so that's happening. And if you haven't taken it yet, please do. But today we're just going to talk a little bit about getting into that mindset of the paradigm shift, that the counterintuitivity. Did I make up a word? Intuitivity, counterintuitiveness? I don't know. Somebody drop in the comments the right word. It's all counterintuitive, right? When we feel the worst, that is our instinct saying something's the matter, right? But we feel mismatched. Our body's telling us something's the matter. But then when nobody else identifies it in the room, we go inward and then we say, well, if nobody else sees it, it must be me. But that's the first misstep, not, a full on like collapse or claiming to not be able to fix like dysfunction in your life or whatever. But it's this small flicker in your nervous system that you log before your brain ever catches up. It's not proof that you're not doing it right. It's proof that your radar works, that your instinct is working. The yuck is not personal, as in your behavior that you can't control. It's entirely biological. And, neuroscience has named this and has had a name for this for a while. And this is one of the things I love to talk about is the salience network. And this network's job is to flag what's important before you consciously process it. That like off moment that you feel, the yuck feel, that's not like you not being able to do it right. It's circuitry. It's circuitry. It's the anterior insula in your brain, the dorsal anterior cingulate. It's lighting up. It's saying, pay attention. That's why your body feels the way it does. The harm comes when no one else acknowledges this and you start believing that you're wrong to even identify and to notice, and then to do your thing, whatever the thing is that your archetype leads you to do. Clapping back, avoiding and shutting it down and taking off, saying yes when you don't want to, freezing up and forgetting the words, or saying that some things that matter and people totally gaslight you and say that it's not true, right? So let's talk about how your system is doing exactly what it's built to do. And when you feel yuck, it's not that it's wrong, it's that it's actually right. And the only way you're going to train your brain is by identifying the feelings, the vibrations in your body when they start to happen. You see, lions clap back, they say the thing, and they're the ones that identify injustice. They don't put up with unfairness to them, to their friends, their family, their loved ones. They will get in your face and they are intimidating, just like how a lion is out in the wild. Most animals are going to just run from it. Like it doesn't even have to roar. It doesn't have to show its teeth. Everybody can tell a lion's a lion. And that is how the archetype is. A lot of my lions get identified as difficult, as hard to get along with. I mean, they're told this their entire lives to the point that they believe it. And then everybody also praises them because they're the ones who can say the thing and do the thing when the other four archetypes often can't. But then we don't see them go home and beat themselves up for saying the thing and doing the thing everybody else wished that they could do because they don't want to say or do the thing, right? And so they feel physiologically awful when they can sense the injustice. They know something's not right and they know that they could probably fix it. Again, subjective, but from their perspective, they believe they can fix the problem, solve the problem. And so they step in, they step up and they do it, often because nobody else will do it. But we don't see them go home and regret saying the thing and doing the thing. So everyone has a shadow side, right? Then you have your flight, the deer. They are masters at shutting shit down and getting the hell out of there because they can see what's coming. They know this is not a safe place or this is not a safe person and they're gone. And so the rest of us see them like incredible boundary holders, right? They don't pop off, but they're like, no, and bolt, right? Uh, and they have this shadow side of wishing they could stay and engage, wishing they could stay and be part of the conversation or the thing that's happening. It's just that it's too much for them, right? They have to get out because and you fill in the blank here. What is it that doesn't feel safe if you were to stay in the situation? And we don't see that about them. We just see them as extremely good at boundaries to a fault. Like we all want to be that good at boundaries where we can say nope and leave, but they don't see it as a gift. Then we have our freeze archetype. That's the owl. And this is my dominant type for the longest time. I really think that I have shifted quite a bit into some different behaviors because I have really started to control my reactions and my reflexes. I don't do the stuff I used to because I know what it is now. And I know when I feel it, like I was talking about in the very beginning, those moments when you can feel something is off because of how your body feels. Because when your body feels yuck or overwhelmed or heart beating too fast or, all of the signs and symptoms, you think you're having some kind of panic attack. That's what I used to think. I thought I was having a panic attack. I'm not sure I've ever had a panic attack. And I thought a couple of years ago I'd had hundreds, if not thousands of them. I don't think I've ever had like a real clinical diagnosed panic attack. I think I was fully amygdala hijacked in my freeze response. So people see me and they think that I can stay super calm and not pop off and not shut it down and not leave and just stay and nod. And they see that as, calmness, competency, blah, 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 thinking. I'm told a lot I'm a thoughtful person because I'm standing there staring at you. And if there's any kind of conflict remotely nearby, I'm frozen. My brain is shut off. I can't think straight. I can't say the thing that I practiced all night long ruminating over, as owls love to do. I mean, everybody ruminates, but owls are kind of like the master ruminator, the queen ruminator, because we don't do the thing in the moment we wished that we did, that we practice so hard at. And it's like a phrase, you practice saying, wow, that hurt my feelings. Wow, that was really unkind. Wow, you have a lot of energy around whatever the thing is. And then the moment the person that causes the conflict shows up and sideswipes us, because we're always sideswiped, always. Owls, like, that's why I think of an owl, because of those big eyes and turning its head, like kind of looking around going, what's going on? They're super wise, of course, but those gigantic eyes, the like, the look that owls get, that's what I always imagined my face to look like when I was in those moments. We go home and ruminate and people think we're thoughtful and, whatever, whatever. We're not necessarily if we are living in the unhealthy side of our survival instinct, which is where the amygdala hijack happens, where your survival brain takes over your entire thinking brain, your frontal cortex, and your entire physiological body, nervous system, limbic system. You go from parasympathetic nervous system to sympathetic nervous system, back and forth, depending on what's going on. And the reason I could never think of the thing in the moment is because there was no blood and oxygen in my frontal cortex, because it all rushed to my survival instinct, because my survival mechanism knew that I was around people or situations that were not safe. And it wanted me to be prepared to react. But my go-to action was to stop and not move, because my brain thought maybe they won't see me. Maybe I could, blend into the carpet. And then we have Fox, who, again, I've said this before, their evolutionary reaction, because it is that people pleasing. It is that saying yes. It is accommodating. It is sort of all of those types of things. And they're the ones who don't want to say yes. They're the ones who want to say no. They're the ones probably who identify the most with the deer and see them having really healthy boundaries, seemingly, because the deer is like yes or no and they're gone. They're busy. They can't be bothered. They got to get out. They have stuff to do. They're going to keep their brain busy with, over scheduling and over tasking and overworking and all of those kinds of things because they just can't stop and be in the moment. But foxes don't see it that way. They see it as really healthy boundaries, right? They can say no and walk away. And it seemingly is a healthy thing. Deer are not thinking that. Deer are saying, why can't I slow down? Why can't I stay in the moment? Why can't I engage? And so the fox doesn't see that. And they're the ones that their archetype sees that. And the fox is identified well before a fox's thinking brain can kick in. The archetype has identified that the person that's unhappy or the situation with the group of people that's unhappy are not safe. Unhappy people are not safe. And therefore, the fox is a master at code switching and reading the room and knowing how to de-escalate and knowing how to appease the threat so that it doesn't eat them. And that's not, as many of my students that are identifying as people pleasing, they see it as something that they wish they could fix. The saying yes, the seeking approval. They want to let that go. And the truth is that I'm teaching them, and hopefully you, is that there's nothing to let go. There's nothing. It is your survival instinct. It's your biology. The only thing that you can do is begin to identify it in the moment. And then we have my signature fifth survival instinct is the seeker, the seeking. That's our panther. And the reason I find this interesting is because there are people that I have seen that can do all of these responses as reactions, as reflexes. They can sort of multitask, if you will, emotionally and verbally and physically and psychologically. That's why I thought of the panther because, a panther can be up in a tree. A panther can bite your head off. A panther can kind of like slink around in the tall grass at night and blend in and camouflage or stay very still. It does all of it. And they are really adept at identifying which reaction instantly is going to solve the feeling of being unsafe and appeasing a threat or avoiding a threat, running away from a threat, getting a threat to back down. The panther's not necessarily, the king of the jungle, but it is a big jungle cat and it will eat your face off. And so panthers, you don't mess around with panthers. And, I say this a lot too, because foxes, the appeasers, people think of them as pushovers and, yes men, blah, 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 or phony or fake with no spine. A fox will bite the shit out of you if it's in a corner. And so foxes, people that identify with my quiz as a fox, y'all need to understand that you are scrappy when you need to be. And if you've never experienced that, you've really just not been pushed into the corner where it's going to come out immediately, like as a reflex. And we don't want that happening. We want to train your fox and also have that in your back pocket if you need it, if you ever do need to come out swinging, with those sharp teeth. Like, yeah, you need to have that skill. And it's the same with panthers. Panthers have the skill to take your head off if they're pushed too far or the situation warrants it, right? The problem that my panthers can identify, I had a student talking to me the other day who took the quiz and I was saying, one of the characteristics of the panther or the seeking instinct is that you can feel something is the matter. And most of the time, you're right. The problem is you see it. Like it's when you're up in the tree and you see it coming a mile away. And then if you are to say something, or if you are to point it out, or if you are to sort of like take preemptive action or preventative measures, which is very smart, but often with preventative measures and preemptive action, it's counterintuitive to people's thought process because humans don't want to do anything until they have to do it, right? So you see it, nobody takes you seriously, and then you can get gaslit to no end. You can be told that what you believe, what you feel, what you see, what you think, what you hear is not true. And that's very hard to navigate as a human. When you are doubted, when you feel something you know is true, you know it to your core. And then you're told, it's not true. You're making it up. You're this or that, and you can be so demoralized when that happens. And you can immediately go to the shadow side of the Panther in the unhealthy place of self-doubt and no longer being able to trust yourself and your instinct. And what's really interesting about Panthers, and again, I have so many students, and part of why I created this fifth archetype is because it's so popular. It's like the next evolved instinct after fawning. We now have this Panther that is dealing with even more sophisticated dysfunction like gaslighting. Gaslighting is extremely different than people that are bulldozing you over that you want to just say yes to and appease because they're just so difficult seemingly. And unhealthy, dysfunctional people are very difficult. They can be. All of us can go there, right? I'm sure there's friends and family listening to this that are like, you have no idea how dysfunctional you have been in the past or whatever, or last week. I will say one of the reasons that I have my storm metaphor that I'm writing about is my mother once, well, many times, but the first time she told me this, it took me by surprise because I'd never realized this about myself when I was younger. And she said that I was like the eye of the hurricane. I would walk into a room and everyone would start whipping around me with my nonsense and drama. And I would just be perfectly content in the middle of the eye, like nothing was happening. And that really spoke to me, God knows how many decades ago when she said that. And it's always stayed in the forefront of my mind because there's something very visceral and emotional about these types of storm systems. And, we're in hurricane season right now, so it's appropriate. All of the ways a system works, all of the moving parts and pieces of it, all of the different science and physics that have to converge, these converging forces in order for this storm system to be created. And that is a lot of that, nature versus nurture, how you're raised and what your reactions are that because of your own experience and story become entirely automatic. They're automatic reflexes that we have. But the message that I have for you today is that this is not about you. This is not who you are. This is not your personality. This is not something you have to live with the rest of your life that you're never going to fix because it's just so automatic. You can't even seem to get a pause in there and get a word in order to interrupt it because it's not about you. Even if it affects you, you need to realize this isn't you. This is your animal archetype instinct reflex. And the reason that I use animals is because I want you to start to see your instinct and your reaction that has potentially frustrated you your entire life because you do say something without thinking, or you don't say the thing and you think too much, or you run to yes and appease before you've even thought something through or checked your calendar, or, you're afraid that people may not, find you palatable and get frustrated with you. And then you end up doing a whole bunch of like free labor while everyone else is off for the weekend. And then you're resentful. And if it wasn't for the resentment, it probably wouldn't be a problem. But most of these instincts end up in resentment. And resentment is poison to your soul. Resentment is the kryptonite to happiness because it is an even worse sort of oily, sticky, just awful feeling. And you cannot be happy and resentful at the same time. You can't. Those two things are such polar opposites. And if we don't get our instincts under control, our animal instincts under control, that is the life we will live, is a life full of resentment. Not just to ourselves because we can't say the no, or we can't not, clap back, or we cannot just shut stuff down and get out. We can't get the words out if we're frozen. And we can't seemingly trust ourselves or be believed when we know for a fact something's happening. We know it. Like, you know it. You know. And you also know when you're doubting yourself. You know that when self-doubt creeps in and you say, I know this thing, but it's got to be me. That's the problem, not the situation. But this is good news. Because if you can understand that your survival instinct archetype is not who you are, it is an animal. It is like a pet that's sitting right beside you. It's like if you had a dog, a puppy, and you never trained it, and then you got mad at it because, it did all the stuff you don't want it to do. It peed on the rug and it chased the mailman. And I remember my sister had a foster dog for a while, and the foster dog would get out from the gate. She was like Houdini dog. And listen, my brother-in-law is a contractor, and so there was no getting out of his gate, and she would get out. This dog, what was her name? Trixie or something. And she would chase the mailman. And the mailman finally had to come to them and say, we're not going to deliver mail to you anymore because this dog, while y'all are at work, is like chasing us down the street. So, they had to stop fostering it and find a forever home for Trixie. But like, that's your animal archetype who's entirely untrained. And then you're mad at it because it's entirely untrained. And the truth is that you're the adult with the thinking brain, and you have to cut yourself some slack. And you have to see that if you invest some time and effort, and I mean, I have a dog that I invested some money in, not a lot. I had a local trainer that was amazing, and I made the sacrifice financially, and I invested in my dog, and my dog is great. My dog is great. Totally worth it. Listens, it's worth it to find the time, the energy, and the investment to train your survival instinct archetype animal, because it will always be with you. It can either be entirely untrained or it can be trained. And that is the self-differentiation that I want you to understand. What you're letting go of is not the behavior. What you're letting go of is idea that the behavior and you are the same, because you're not. You are like an incredibly perfect human being, just as you are. As creature, we are all flawed, right? And, from the moment we are born, we are dying, and anything and everything in the created world can happen. And we are not going to be perfect. Otherwise, we would be like, a deity because we're perfect. So just by default of being human, of being alive and in a created world, everything and anything can happen that, follows physics. Physics were given to us, so it has to follow physics. But other than that, anything and everything can happen in this world. So beside the fact that you're a creature and you have flaws, right? That's just a given. None of us are perfect. There's no way we can strive for perfection and know that we're going to fall on our face every time, right? It's not happening. But with the humanity flaw piece, you are perfect just as you are. You were made uniquely and special, and there's nobody like you in this entire world. And there's nobody in this entire world that has the right to make you feel bad about yourself, to doubt yourself, not to trust yourself. Of course, you're going to screw up. Of course, you're going to get it wrong. Of course, you're going to make a bad call, a bad decision, whatever, because of the humanity piece. But that being said, you, in this very moment, as you listen to my words, need to hear that you are perfect just as you are, flaws and all. Because we all have flaws, and there's nobody better or worse. There's nobody that does their survival instincts better or worse. And a lot of us, really smart people come from a place of trauma because we had to figure shit out, especially when we were kids and there was not a lot of options. You had to find ways to survive. And depending on your experience and your story, it is that instinct that developed because of the situation. If you were under constant threat, you would have developed one way. Some people learned that the louder they got, the bigger they got, the less of a threat there was around them. Some people realized that they needed to get the hell out of there. There wasn't a lot of places to go for kids, but you have to. This stuff is so rudimentary and at the same time extremely sophisticated. The way that your instinct keeps you alive is so sophisticated. There's so many layers and levels of it that it's just fascinating. And, when you're around unhappy people, you have learned, your survival instinct has learned, it's just easier to appease them. It's just easier. It's a lot less hassle. It's a lot less conflict. You can go about your day. And what do you have to live with? A little bit of resentment, a lot of resentment. But you convince yourself a little bit of resentment. You get frustrated with yourself and then you're like, fine, but I'll deal with it, right? Whatever. But that's not what you want to be doing. And there's no reason you need to be doing that. All of these animal instincts are reflexes that can be interrupted at any time. And that's what thought work is about. Once we understand that other people's words are bullshit, just like our words are bullshit, our thoughts are entirely made up on the spot in the moment. And emotionally immature people, whom I was for a very long time, open their mouths and share stuff that they think is a good idea because they've never thought it through. They've never said, wow, why did my brain just offer me something really unkind to say about or to that person? Why did my brain tell me that I'm right in this situation? How do I know I'm right? Everything is subjective, right? Or my brain allowed me to believe what somebody else said to me about me or whatever, or to somebody else about me. And I give that so much weight and credit when the truth is they're just word salad that ran through somebody's gray matter in their brain in that moment. And they decided it was a good idea to open their mouths and say shit that's harmful to other human beings who are just as imperfect as they are. Really. I think back to all of those experiences that I stayed up all night ruminating about and lost sleep over. Once I learned that I was dealing with emotional children and that I was being amygdala hijacked by my pet owl that thought it was trying to keep me safe, but it was absolutely freezing me to a point where things were getting worse, not better, because those instincts are only when you're truly in life-threatening situations, physical life-threatening situations. Because when you're in complicated emotional or interpersonal situations, then you need to be able to think it through. You need to be able to respond, not react. And reacting is the survival instinct archetype animal. It is jumping in front of you and it is roaring, or it is bolting, or, it is jumping in the tree and it sees everything, coming, like almost like catastrophic thinking at times. I mean, it is saying yes before you even look at your schedule and realize that, you've got Timmy's 8,000 soccer games for a tournament this weekend, and you've, told Bob in accounting you'd cover him or whatever. The survival instincts are not for more sophisticated situations where you need to think in the moment, because your survival instinct kicks your thinking brain to the curb with a pair of steel-toed stilettos, and it is like beat up and it ain't coming back for a good hour. And then you're going to do the whole, oh, now I thought about the thing I should have said, or I wish I had, or I wish I didn't, or, all of that stuff. But, I think back to those moments when I was first starting out in my second career, and I was the youngest woman at the table. In some of these places, I was the first woman at the table, the only woman at the table. My first church call where I was accepted as the pastor. I was a solo pastor and I was the first woman, and I was young-ish. I mean, compared for the church, I was young considered. And I was a new mother, so I had an infant, and I had a husband that traveled, and everybody was seemingly supportive when I first started, and they were very welcoming. But then everything changed almost immediately. And I started to see that I was just expected to do what I was told. And I was hired because they thought I would be an easy sort of target to get all of their agendas across. There was like one sort of power group and they just wanted to do all this stuff. And I was like, I was talking about owls and blindsiding. I was so blindsided by just the horrific behavior of human beings in a church. And, I kind of thought it was just a one-off, but that was my entire career, was just like the most acute, awful behavior. We often will, and I heard this later on, obviously not when I needed it, churches being called hospitals for sick souls. And that was my experience. And I was in the ICU, let me tell you. I was working in the ICU ward because some of these folks were very sick, very sick. And I would walk into a room and I could feel the tension. I could feel the pressure. I could feel what it is that they had expected of me to do. And a lot of it I disagreed with. And it did not go well for me because I didn't just like hop to and do what I was told, because I actually had a master's of divinity and was an ordained and educated and trained minister. And I knew that a lot of what they wanted was bullshit. And it was not what we were called to do and be as community in a church. They'd all gather around for the meetings of the of session, the council, and it all looked really polished on the surface, but it would just unravel afterward. And, there were like the parking lot meetings that people were waiting for me to come out, but I'd always have to like do something in my office or whatever. And then I'd come out and just get like jumped from the bushes, like old church people hanging out, waiting for me to walk to my car so that they could tell me all the things that they wouldn't say in the meeting in front of everybody, but thought if they, yelled it at me in the parking lot that I would, kowtow to them and do something different. One afternoon, there was a decision that landed that just fell flat out unethical. And I asked, are we allowed to say no to this? Because polity says we can. We don't have to do this. What if following what you guys think is right is actually violating our values? And there was silence, and then there was laughter. And then there was like responses like, wow, you're so idealistic, welcome to how this place really works, how we have all these expectations of you. And, I totally froze in the moment. And it was like my brain was saying, this is just too intense. This can't be real. Maybe I don't get it. Am I messing up? Did I learn something wrong? But, I look back now and I see it entirely differently. That was not a misstep on my part. I was doing what I was called to do as a minister. It's like, yeah, hold up the morals and ethics of a community and mirror it back to them when they're not behaving well. And instead, I let people's words and thoughts about me intimidate me. And I didn't see myself reacting rather than identifying, oh, wow, there goes my owl. It's okay. You can back down. We know how to do this. We've trained for this. Let's kickstart our thinking brain. Let's do all the different things that I relate to in order to get my thinking brain back online. And then I can think through this like the human being with the evolved prefrontal cortex that I have, instead of just reacting and then ruminating and then beating myself up because I didn't do the thing because I couldn't even think about it in the moment. We need our thinking brains. And the survival instinct is not who we are. It's not who you are. It was my instinct noticing a breach in ethics and morals that nobody wanted to name. And I'm called to name it, right? I have a hard time with the clap back. So that like flicker, that instant in my body wasn't the problem. But the story that I was telling myself that I was attached to, that was the problem. So I want you to take a step this week. When you feel that flicker of, something's not right, and then you see the turning inward of maybe I'm the problem, right? The self-doubt or the regret or the beating yourself up or, I wish I did this. I wish I didn't do that, blah, 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 blah. Take a minute and just like flag it and do that however you want. If you're a journaler, write in the journal. If you're a post note person, make a post-it note. Right. I had somebody recently writing crap on their arm they have like a Sharpie and they'd write shit on their arm so they could remember it. That cracked me up. I loved it, but it worked for them. I was like, that's amazing. Looked like tattoos to me, whatever. Don't analyze this. Don't justify it. Don't try to fix it. And definitely don't beat yourself up. Just label the yuck feeling in your body. Where is it? What does it feel like? What is the fear? And identify that as your first clue, not your misstep. And think of it like your animal leaving you a little paw print, right? And it's saying, hello, something's the matter. Something's the matter, and I'm going to jump in and fix it for you before you can even think about it. So we're going to start to practice the pause, but the only way you can do that is first by identifying the feeling in your body that causes the reaction. Because there's a feeling first, physically in your body, yuck or panic, or, you identify the feeling. And that's when your archetype identifies threat. And that's when it springs into action, right? So this is that like first step it's about to jump. It's first paw print, right? And then you don't scold it. You just mark this journey, the physiological journey of your body that's happening before the reflex, because that's exactly the way it works. It just happens in nanoseconds. So that's how you begin separating you from the reflex that you feel is running your body and your mind. It's actually just your archetype and it's running beside you. It's your pet and it's time to train it. Speaking of training your pets, I am dropping all of my toolkits. I'm getting there. The Panther, Lion, and Fox are out. And you can go to charliehornetscoaching.com/Fox/Fawn. And you will find the archetype toolkit there. And for Lion, it's the same idea, lion/fight. So .com/lion/fight. And you will find the toolkits there. And right now for subscribers, I'm offering this to you for $9.97. And typically I would sell something like this for like at least $39. So it's pretty cool. It's very cool. And I've got some customized master classes coming soon for you. And just jump on the subscriber list if you want my newsletter and finding out all the things that are coming out, because I have tons of really cool stuff. Plus the Etsy store, which is getting started. So charliehornetscoaching.com/subscribe. So this week I want you to identify the moment before the reaction where you feel yuck in your body, wherever it is. That's what you're going to do this week, all week. Don't judge it. Don't change it. Don't fix it. Don't beat yourself up. When you catch yourself ruminating, just say, this is practice. I'm just practicing. I'm practicing training my archetype because it's running beside me, waiting for me to feel yuck. And then it jumps right in front of it and wrecks everything. It doesn't have to be that way. We've got to train it. So lots of resources. Listen to the pod. That's free. If you want to jump in deeper, my toolkits are coming out. So Panther, Lion, and Fox are out. And I've also got some masterclasses coming out. They're going to be customized to each archetype. So you can get those. They're digital. They are self-coaching. Also, if you're interested in small group coaching with your archetype, like a group of foxes or a group of lions, I have something called Circle on the website. It's on the homepage, and you can jump on there and let me know if you're interested. If there's enough of you that want to start a small group, I'd be happy to, try to lead it with you or whatever, do some coaching. So there's that too. So next week, we're going to talk about, this week we're naming the pause, the moment before. Next week, we're going to talk about giving the reflex a name, because the moment you name the thing that's going to jump in and like derail you, that's when your story that you've told yourself your whole life starts to shift, because you've been telling yourself a story that you can't change this behavior your whole life. And then you've lived in regret and self-doubt and felt terrible because you can't shift that behavior. You can't let it go. It's not the behavior you're going to let go of. It's the story you've been telling yourself your whole life. And that's the paradigm shift we're trying to get you to. That is the emotional, the spiritual, and the transformational awakening that will happen organically as part of this work. It is guaranteed 100%. If you do the work, you will have that paradigm, that spiritual, that transformational shift and awakening. So subscribe so that you don't miss next week. It is going to be another good one. And if you are ready to dive deeper and get the map, then you want my toolkit. So my Panthers, Lions, and Foxes are ready. Go get those. And they are a limited time offer right now for $9.97. Want to get them out. They're kind of beta a little bit. Let me know what you think. Forgive any typos. Feel free to email me so I fix them, whatever. So I want you to grab them, try them out. Let me know what you think. And remember, this isn't about identity. This is not about who you are. This is about your instinct. You're not here to figure yourself out. You're not here to let go of behavior that frustrates you. You're here to let go of the narrative that you have told yourself that you can change at any moment, because your thoughts are not real. Your thoughts are made up and your brain offers them to you and you don't have to accept them. You're here to figure the room out faster. And you're here to kickstart your thinking brain so that your survival animal is not an untrained dog chasing you, the mailman down the street like Trixie. You've got to train your archetype. And I promise you, if you do this work, it will organically happen. It's just a byproduct. It's not like a result you chase. It is, you do the work, you get it, the end. Percent. Because that was my experience. And that has been the experience of many of my students going forward. It's truly a transformational awakening, right? It's not like mindset bullshit. It is like actual awakening into a paradigm shift, into a different way of seeing and doing and feeling and being. All right, friends, I cannot wait to see you next week, or talk to you next week, I should say. And have an amazing week. You have homework, give it a try, and let me know what you think. And my Panthers, Lions, and Foxes, go grab that toolkit right away. And I will have some stuff up on Etsy soon, so go check that out too. All right, friends, take care. Bye.